Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well. I've been wanting to film this video for absolutely ages. It is my dissertation sort of journey, tips, advice. It's probably the question that I'm getting asked a lot at the minute because a lot of you guys who have watched my university journey are already on yours or coming to the end of yours now that I finished my last year. And I feel like a lot of you are worrying about dissertation third year. So dissertation wise, it was probably my biggest worry and stress going into third year. Even when I first started uni, I would think, oh my god, dissertation, everyone would make it this huge big thing, and yeah, it did worry me a lot. It worried me a lot. A high anxiety when I went back for third year because of the dissertation. Everyone saying sort of your whole grade depended on it, and there was just a lot of pressure from high up in the uni, and just sort of this general sort of weird pressure that people had made it out to be. The only thing that sort of kept me a little bit grounded is shout out to Ames Banks on YouTube. Make sure you go check her out because she was in the school year above me at uni, and she is the most chilled person in the world, and she sort of had calmed me down because we used to go and do little study dates, and she'd be working on her dissertation, and she'd always say to me that it's definitely bigged up more than it is, and sort of she kept my anxiety a little bit lower because of how chill she was around hers. So thanks Amy for that. I've actually written a load of notes down here about my personal dis journey. I'm going to talk about sort of how doing a science based dis was, because obviously it is different to English based dissertations. There are slightly different versions depending on what course you're doing, but just generally I thought I'd share my story because it hopefully will help other people out figuring out what they want to do, and how mine was set out and how I sort of went about it. I could literally talk about this for hours, so I'm going to try not to bore you too much, but I also want to go into a little bit more detail than I ever did on my vlogs. So I did forensic science as my degree at uni, and I decided to do my dissertation on gender discrimination within the industry. So my title ended up being Gender Discrimination and the Impact of Female Inequality in the Forensic Science Industry. I know a lot of you will be like, well, that's not really science-based, and to be fair, I didn't want my I didn't want my dissertation to be lab-based because I knew that's something that I didn't enjoy. And as soon as I found out that I didn't have to go in the labs and do a physical experiment for my dis, I jumped at the chance to do a paper-based one, but I still had to do it in the scientific format, in the sense that I'd still have to carry out some sort of experiment, get the results and analyse them and discuss them. So for me to do that, I obviously had a really great dissertation supervisor. I'm very lucky. I know people have nightmares with theirs, and that's something that I did worry about too, but luckily I got my dis supervisor and she was super helpful. She was a woman as well, so she obviously felt the struggles. I had no idea what I was going to do my dissertation on, just as I entered third year. If you do have some sort of idea, that's absolutely great, because it makes you feel a little bit more settled about the whole idea, but I had literally no idea, so I was panicking anyway. And then they were get your ideas in. We had to pick 3 separate ideas, sort of had to pitch them online, just writing what we'd want to sort of investigate. I had to pick our potential supervisors, and I was like, please let me pick mine, because I knew she would be great for it, as I had her as a lecturer in some of my modules, and she was just great. The way she taught, I just really liked it, and she was very thorough and extremely intelligent, so I was like, I would love to have her as my supervisor. And a lot of my friends and a lot of people on my course did experimental, obviously, rather than the paper-based like I did. So there were so many different topics that you could go into, or you could delve into. So there was ballistics, fire, drugs of abuse, forensic toxicology, forensic anthropology, DNA, genetics, fingerprints, trace evidence. I'm trying to think of more. Entomology. I can't think of anything. Nuclear forensics, explosives, it literally went on and on. There were so many things you could go into, but I just really wanted to do mine paper-based because I knew I enjoy writing, so I knew that I'd enjoy that way more than being in the labs. I remember sort of the light bulb-ish moment of when I wanted to sort of go into gender, and that was obviously my top choice. Me and Meg were sat in Cafe Nero, and I sort of was browsing, looking through lots of academic papers. A really interesting one about women and men being compared. I think it was in rape cases or something along those lines, and I think Meg came up with the idea oh, how could you incorporate feminism and sort of female inequality into forensics. And I was like, oh my god, I'd love to do it as more like of a general thing rather than like delve into one area specifically. And luckily my thing got approved and my dissertation ended up being successful. I got first in it, which is just crazy. So yeah, that's sort of where the idea blossomed, and I would definitely recommend, if you're passionate about a specific area in your course, then please try and pitch that idea, show you're passionate about it, show why you'd love to sort of like look into that area, because then you will actually enjoy the process. Like I said in my vlogs that my dissertation was actually my favourite piece of work I've ever done. Like I really enjoyed writing it. Obviously there were stressful times, but there was no other piece of work that I enjoyed doing as much as my diss, because I just felt so passionate towards all the work I did for it. My dissertation format was the title page, the acknowledgements, which were optional, an abstract, an introduction, methods, methodology / experimental, results, discussion, conclusion, references, and appendices. I think that is slightly different depending on obviously what course you're doing. I know my friends who do like English had like chapters rather than obviously like the whole results discussion section. Yeah, that's how I laid mine out, and everything's very pernickety. I was marked stuff, not just like the content of the work, like how you format the references, the appendices, the title page, like dimensions and everything. So it's really quite specific, which obviously put me on edge because there's a lot of pressure to get everything perfect. But yeah, that's how my thing was laid out. I definitely say references were the biggest ball ache. Reference to reference are so different, and you need to make sure you're doing it in the right style, that they're all spaced out correctly, you've got the right words or phrases or titles in italics. Like I'd say I probably spent the most of my time sort of faffing around with the references rather than the actual piece of work. I did my methodology experimental section first, which was technically chapter 2. Before I did my abstract, before I did my introduction, I sort of focused on my methods, because that's what the first thing I did in terms of my dissertation. I set out what I was going to do, and then obviously carried out the results after that. So in terms of the structure, it really messed with my brain, because I'm like a massive control freak and want to do everything in chronological order. So it was stressing me out, but it worked out so much better doing methods first, and that's what my supervisor suggested. So I did all my methods, got all the results, wrote them up, did the discussion. I think I even did the conclusion, and then I went back up and did the introduction, then the abstract, and that's the order I sort of wrote everything in, and did my references as I went along, and that really helped sort of make me very knowledgeable in the topic before I started writing the introduction, which needed to be obviously gripping for the person who was reading it. In terms of the actual methods, in case anyone wanted to know, I did I collected 4 different sort of data sets, which was intense because I had to obviously get some statistics together in the results section and compare things and sort of make a point and hopefully draw a conclusion. So the first thing I did was set up an online survey on Qualtrics. I had to get that ethically approved to make sure I wasn't obviously securing anyone's IP addresses and emails and stuff, and it was all completely anonymous. And then I had to send out that and get like a good decent bulk of participants so that my results were somewhat valid. And I ended up managing to get 50 participants, which was amazing, because my survey specification, as you like, was quite specific. To say the least. Like, I needed people who had been in the forensic science industry, whether that was on the field or a lecturer or anyone who had some sort of experience in forensic science. Obviously that was quite hard, so I used LinkedIn as a great source of exposing that, and lots of my lecturers were really helpful actually and shared that with all their friends. So I had toxicologists, DNA analysts, forensic chemists, nuclear forensics, like I had literally CSIs. I had such a range of people respond to my questions, and I think I wrote 10 questions, maybe 12, gathering some basic information about, like, obviously what they did their work in, whether they worked for private or government. What else did I ask? Stuff to do with their personal experience being an employee, and whether they felt that their gender affected how they were treated in the workplace, or if they've ever witnessed any gender discrimination against their colleagues in the workplace. Whether they felt like there was a gender pay gap, whether they thought their pay was transparent in their organisation, company, business. So yeah, lots of very interesting questions and answers and responses, which helped me analyse. Obviously I found some very interesting correlations, such as like females obviously saying that they had witnessed discrimination or felt like they were the victims of discrimination in the workplace, whereas men, most of them I think said no, if not none. In comparison to women, and there was just lots of like very interesting comparisons. I also looked separately from the survey that I did on Qualtrics. I looked at the gender pay gap and the frequency distribution graph that I had created. You could see like a very large shift of male jobs being higher, showing that men are more likely to get higher paid jobs. And they dominate the sort of forensic science industry. I read a lot of articles that sort of showed how women are seen in less STEM field job roles because they are scared of the male dominated jobs in the industry in science and technology, engineering, maths, and the fact that they underestimate their abilities because of it too. So yeah, it was really interesting reading up about it. So I did gender pay gap, sorry, I keep getting all muddled up with everything. And then I also looked at job advertisements and specific wording and gendered language in job advertisements, and found that certain words were sort of specific to genders, which was very interesting when obviously advertising. So all of the higher paid jobs that were like managers, bosses, analysts, like things that paid more, had lots of like masculine encoded words, and they described men in ways like ambitious, driven, independent, strong, all of this sort of intellectual words. And then all of the female roles that were like assistant and deputy and like smaller roles that where the salaries were a lot less, they used feminine encoded words like children, support, fragile, and like words like that. And it was so infuriating, and obviously that was like a very passionate section because it made me very angry, and actually was one of my highly sort of complimented sections in my dissertation. And then the last thing I looked at was journal authors. So I looked at whether more men were published than women, or were more women published than men. Obviously you can guess that it was the first one. More men were published than women, and more women were published on their own. I found out lots of stuff. There's this really interesting concept called the Matilda effect, where women are not celebrated for their achievements and their male counterparts are the ones that sort of got the credit for their discoveries. For example, Franklin, her discovery to do with DNA was wiped by Watson and Crick taking the spotlight, and when it was actually her who discovered the X-ray, they could determine the DNA helical structure. Nettie Stevens, she discovered the XY chromosome and how that can obviously gender an individual. And what's his name? Wilkinson? That could be completely wrong. There's basically some dude that basically got all the credit for her stuff as well. I hope you can see how passionate I was about my dissertation, and that comes across, and I think that is what worked well for me and my personal advice. One of my main tips that I would say in my vlogs is to set small goals. Set them early, so 200 words a day. Even if it ends up being shit, at least you've got your whole first draft to go through, and then you can start like editing and tweaking things. I set myself 200 words a day, and I usually exceeded it, which made me feel even better after the day, and just kept me focused and on track. So if you set yourself even 100 words a day, if you do it even earlier than me, you will be well underway for hitting your deadline. I'm gonna actually quickly look at my phone because I asked you guys on Instagram some of your personal dissertation advice, because obviously my advice is not gonna work for everyone. We're all different people and our brains work differently. I'd love to know how long it took me to write my dissertation. Like, I wonder how many hours I spent in Cafe Nero. I would love to know. And these are some of your guys' top tips. Some of them I actually fully agree with and I did. Others that are completely different sort of strategies, ways to think about stuff, and hopefully they can help some of you out. So we've got, don't be afraid to ask your supervisor questions. That's what they're there for. My supervisor was super helpful. Every time I had a question, she would reply pretty much instantly, which I'm very grateful for. But yeah, please communicate with your supervisor if you are worrying about anything, because they're there to help. They want you to get a good grade. We've got discuss your research with a tutor before writing. I found talking it through helped me. Make a literature table containing all of your sources, the research as a summary, your thoughts and referencing. Chop it into small chunks and set yourself small deadlines rather than focusing on it in one big lump. I agree. Someone's put plan to procrastinate. Plan so far ahead that you can procrastinate. That is a fair point. Like, if you're planning so far in advance and you know what you're doing, you have time to sort of balance it with your life. You don't want to be consumed by this dissertation weeks and weeks beforehand. You want to be in control and know how it's going and that you're going to get it done on time without that extra stress, alongside your other deadlines as well. So please plan in advance if you can. Write about something you're passionate about, then it just flows. Fully agree. Save all of your sources in a folder on your laptop so it's easy to go back and check things. Very good. I used RefWorks, but I know people use Mendeley. There are loads of great things for referencing, so make sure you utilize one of those because they're so good for your dissertation, because I think I had about 80 references in the end. So yeah, you definitely need like a software or something. Usually your university will be linked to one, or your uni account email address will be linked to one, so you can store all of your resources and you won't worry about like losing them or, you know, not saving them. Make sure to make a master bibliography reference list on a separate Word document as you go. Definitely do it as you go. Do your reading early, get the literature review done. I personally didn't have like a lit review. Mine was more so in my introduction, which I did at the end. But yeah, if you're doing a English-based dissertation, then yeah, do your lit review early apparently. Aim to write 300 words a day because it's more manageable. Yeah, like I said, I did 200 and usually exceeded it. Like some days I'd do 800 and it would make me feel so good because I'd be like, oh my God, that's 4 days work or whatever. Oh, this is an interesting one from one of my friends from uni. She put, I got the read aloud feature on Word to read it for me, to proofread it, so you could pick up any mistakes easily. This is such a good idea. If you get someone else to read it out if they have time, or if not, get this feature on Word. I didn't even know it existed, and it can read out your dissertation for you, so you can like obviously hear any grammatical errors or hear any sentences that don't sound right and not very articulated very well. So that sounds great. She also put, I printed the journal articles as I was referencing so I could highlight the bits I wanted to see. Also very good. Be more than willing for your idea to change as you research. Fair. I'm pretty sure if I look back at my original notes, there would be loads of stuff I didn't include and switched and changed. So that's a fair point. Don't start with the intro. You don't have to write the chapters in a specific order. Yep, you know. Have a friend or parent read it before submission to correct typos and structural errors. I also did this. I printed off my dissertation and passed it around my mum, dad and David. Literally sat in my living room for 2 hours, I think it was, all passing around pages of my dissertation and proofreading, and they found so many mistakes. So that is perfect. Even if it's just like a little comma, an apostrophe, an and instead of an an, like literally that was the best thing I ever did. It was literally the day before and I was like, can I just have one last proofread? And they were amazing. Yeah, write the methodology first. It seems like we did very similar things. Setting daily word targets, start well in advance, make a plan. I've got 3 top tips. 1, look after yourself, don't overwork, foster positive writing habits. Manage your supervisor relationship. It's your dissertation, not theirs. They're there to guide you. And don't start with a preconceived conclusion. Let your research guide the writing. And this is from someone who's done a bachelor's, master's and a PhD, so we're gonna take her advice. If you're doing a diss and you need any participants or anything, feel free to comment on this video and we can all help each other out if we obviously fit the criteria to fill out the dissertations. I love helping people out, and especially because it was so hard to find mine. I know how difficult it is. And then the last one I've got here is have another Word document for cutting your dissertation to make it easier and less sentimental. That is a good idea. Maybe like having your conclusion on one page, abstract on another, just to sort of like separate it all out so it's not like one big bulk of writing and it's less intimidating. I can see why that's obviously really helpful. Finally got the dissertation video done. I really hope this has helped some people out there. Feel free to comment any of your tips if you've got anything else that I haven't suggested. Make sure to give a thumbs up if you are enjoying the Back to University series. Let me know if there's anything you want me to do. I want to do lots of like uni fashion videos, maybe like a night out style inspo style video. I also want to do like back to uni cozy or winter outfits. So yeah, let me know. I've also got an advice video going up with my best friend Hattie as well, which will be exciting for like 3rd year advice and like finishing uni. So yeah, that should be exciting. Make sure to hit the thumbs up, subscribe down below if you're new, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.